This conference will now be recorded.
All right, everybody, it's now just after 6 on Wednesday, November 16th, 2022, and I'll call this regular meeting of council to order. We are meeting in Winnipeg tonight and have moved this meeting to a Wednesday because council members and our CAO were at an elected officials seminar in beautiful downtown Beausejour the last 2 days. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that whether we are in Winnipeg or in Victoria Beach, we are meeting on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree and the Anishinaabe and the homeland of the Métis people. Introductions, we'll start with our council member on the screen.
Hello, Steve Axworthy.
There you go, thank you. And
Councilor Graham Randall, good evening.
CAO Lon Turner.
Penny McMorris, Mayor.
Councilor Irwin Kumka.
Councilor Ian Chatsey.
Thank you, gentlemen. We will move on to adoption of the agenda. Be it resolved the agenda be adopted as presented. May I have a mover? Irwin, thank you. Ian, second. Any additions, gentlemen? Tonight's agenda.
No one did.
All right.
Just to discuss the idea of a Christmas party for employees.
Okay. Any other additions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Moving on to the minutes. Be it resolved, the minutes of the November 1st, 2022 regular council meeting be adopted as presented. May I have a mover? Graham, thank you. Ian, second. Comments? There's a little bit of a delay, Steve, sorry. By the time your hand
You
comes
sped up right there and I knew exactly what happened.
So no comments on the minutes?
They appear to be accepted.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. We do not have any delegations or hearings tonight, so we will move on to our committee reports, starting with Public Works, which I thank Dane and Elaine for providing. Weekly garbage pickup is every Monday. Please call to add your address to the list to assist Public Works in making the pickup more efficient. You can also have your address added to our list of windrow clearing after the snow plow has been by during the winter. To make things easier for Public Works, your address must be clearly visible and not on a rock or a post that is buried in snow. And please give them a good 24 to 36 hours if you can notice. The majority of fall brush pickup has been completed by Public Works, thanks to all who brought their brush to the fire hall site. Contractor has been hired to chip all the brush stacked up at the fire hall. Now that the grader is repaired, the roads have finally been graded. Public Works continues to have a long list of dead and dangerous trees on municipal property and will continue to cut and remove them. E-service requests can be made from the Arm of Victoria Beach webpage. Preventative maintenance is ongoing on all municipal equipment. Water samples from the well at the fire hall and the Albert Beach pump house are tested monthly throughout the winter. That is Public Works. Any comments, concerns?
Nope. Good report.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to finance. Ian? Or I should say after our meeting today, Councilor Chadsey.
Okay, so you have some of the numbers in front of you. As of October 31st, actual revenues are 3.4 million. Our budget 3.5. So we're off by too much. There's a bit more to collect. I was looking at the actuals versus last year at as of October 31st. So year to date was 2.7 million. So you can see it's up 27%. I'm sort of highlighting these numbers to sort of highlight when we get into budget. We can look at these numbers compared to last year, so we can see what we need to do for next year. So you can see that year over year revenue is up 27%, which is really a good thing. And there's about $65,000 left if we compare the actuals to the budget. The expense side is doing quite well. I think we're at 3.1 million. Budget had it at 3.5. Looks like looks like we should come in, if you compare the two, subtract the actuals from what we spent, you've got about 312,000 left for the next 2 months. After factoring on last week, looks like we should come in on budget for this year. Maybe have a small surplus, but not a big one. And then again, if you look at the expenses, really last year versus this year, and I don't know if I have this correct, it looks like it's up 30%. So you can see revenues up 27% and expenses were up 30%. So we got to try to make that meet if we want to have a goal of not increasing taxes. Cash in the bank is 766,000. Lon was telling me that, sorry, that's wrong. It's 640,000. And no, I got that right. 766,000 for October. And Lon was suggesting that as of November, it'd be down to 640. And then if we look out when that would get used up, I guess we were thinking in February we'd be back to zero. So as of February, we'd be back to zero, and then we'd be going into our reserves to pay for that. So it's something that we should think about. If you start thinking about finances in your own household, right? You've got salary coming in, you've got expenses going out. When you start spending more than you're making and you're using your savings don't last forever. So it's the same thing in a business. So we should start thinking about trying to match those two so that we're not using the reserve fund, because obviously the reserve fund is set up for things that pop up that aren't expected. As far as that goes, I guess I'll stop there.
Typically springtime, May to June, before the tax revenues come in the last 4 years, we have used our reserves. So we're bridging. So it's a relatively inexpensive way because we're using essentially our own money.
And then that money gets reimbursed once the
Yeah,
tax.
we recover that when the tax money starts to flow in.
The challenge running the municipality, you get all your money essentially in 1 month or almost all of it. And you then hope you can get through to the next July and still have some left.
But I guess the idea is that if you go from February to July and you're sort of funding that shortfall, you'll have the same problem next year. Right? You'll have the same problem next year. And then if you had something that came up or a huge expenditure where you start using up that reserve, then you're kind of hooped.
Yeah.
So I'm just suggesting that maybe something to think about for budget next year is to try and match it so that we're, the revenue and the expenses are end up being zero and last through to July. That's really the operating cycle.
Well, to do that, you'd have to increase your reserves. We'd have to change the bylaw to increase the reserves.
Just the one thing that you can do right off the top is you see that the taxes receivable, the dollar figure in there almost matches what's in your general reserve. If you can convert the majority of those taxes receivable into cash, that would help cover not having to dip into reserves too much for the fall and the spring. So we'll talk about that later on the agenda.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We had talked, never really went anywhere, but the idea was floated a couple of years ago about some sort of modest reward or incentive to paying your taxes before the deadline. Is that worth further consideration?
My own municipality in St. Andrews used to give a 2% discount for paying your taxes 2 months in advance. And when you calculate out what the after-tax benefit is, it's quite substantial. But unfortunately, they stopped doing that this year because it was becoming a bit too expensive.
Well, I'll ask Ian whether he thinks that that's an idea that might merit further thought.
Yeah, no, I think it's certainly worth crunching some numbers to see what the benefit is.
Most municipalities did that for years and years and years, but
So why did they stop, I wonder?
well,
Nightmare.
that'd be my guess.
And then how effective is it? Does that entice people to pay early? How many, what percentage, is it worth the extra?
Most people didn't crunch the numbers, you know, on an after-tax basis, it was, you were earning more money than you would pay. For sure.
I'm just wondering, do we allow people to pay their taxes on a monthly basis? So
Can you
there's,
set up
it's
an
just,
automatic monthly?
Through their bank?
Yeah.
Or they can
no, but
send
we
in
don't
checks
set
every
that
time.
up. With WinPay, they set that up. So I pay my taxes monthly. I believe. So they break it into 12
Yeah, and
installments.
there's an interest component that's
They
attached
don't do
to
that.
monthly or quarterly payments.
Right.
It's my understanding, because of our calendar year being December or January to December, and our tax year being July to July, my understanding that you have to pay a chunk, like you can't pay, you can't, I can't explain this, because the bill comes out in June, you start paying in July, you can pay up to December, but then you're almost expected to have all your money in by then. Then you have to have one big chunk. Like, I don't think you can pay each month.
The easiest thing for anybody to do is just go online through their bank and to select and set the,
Doing an
as a
automatic.
vendor,
No,
and
I-
do an automatic payment out of
I was
there,
thinking-
rather than have us go into their account, because
Yeah,
that's a bit of a setup for on our end. Could do that, I suppose.
I was just adding the idea onto Graham's idea, because if people paid in advance, right, monthly.
but people do, some do.
Yeah, some people have credits on there.
I think it's worth considering.
But I'm just saying, if they pay in advance, then that's, instead of the 2%, you're
Are
getting the money, I guess you'd be getting the money in August for next year.
you willing to take a look at the numbers based on a few common sense?
Sure.
Our taxes aren't due till the end of July, but lots of people pay as soon as they get the bill in June. So we do get a nice cash flow starting in June.
I think at this point it would be for us to ask Luan to do that kind of thing. Instead of asking.
To see if the 2%, I guess it's a question of phoning St. Andrews and say, ask them what percentage of the people took advantage of that 2%. That'd be the simplest way to see if it's worth the.
Would you be willing to do that?
It's kind of like the old discount on your receivables, you know, your 210.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's right. The way it works.
But if you call them and whoever was in charge and they say, yeah, we did that, we don't do it anymore, but we got 30% of the taxpayers to do that, then you can actually crunch the numbers based on that.
My guess, the uptake was probably minimal, so it probably wasn't worth the aggravation for a relative.
Well, it may depend to some extent on how widely it was announced and promoted. If we do think it's worthwhile trying, we're going to promote the hell of it, obviously, for everybody's benefit.
I think it depends on, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say that I'm not saying that's a bad idea. Typically, the way that I'm used to doing things such as this is that if you're paying monthly, there's actually a small increase in costs, like a very small percentage, like 1% or so. If you're proposing to do it the other way, ultimately you have to do a cost analysis to see as to whether or not we're going to be making more money in the end or less money in the end. If the RM is going to be making less money as a result, then there's no reason to do this. If we're going to either be increasing our revenues or at least breaking even, then that makes a lot more sense.
And it has to be worth it for the consumer, right? It has to be worth it for residents to do it.
Because ultimately what happens is that if we start to not make as much money, we're increasing taxes.
You'll have cash in the bank maybe, but your revenues, which you acknowledge for, are going to go down because you're giving a 2% rebate on paying early.
Yeah.
So
By
in
2%.
your budget, you've got $5,000 for this house. We just gave them 2%. So knock off
Right,
whatever that is.
but they pay back into money over time.
I think it's worth a conversation at come budgeting just to see and float some ideas around. I mean, anything's always worth some exploration if it means that we could potentially increase revenues. But I don't necessarily think that we should be having an ongoing conversation about this right now, but I think it's certainly worth taking a look at budget time. So, yeah.
That's fair.
Okay, thank you.
Just one general comment, our CSO and policing expenses increased by about $150,000 over last year. That's a big dent, but I do believe the CSO experiment proved to be very, very viable, and we certainly saw a greater police presence in the community, and I think money was well spent. I think we might want to take a look at refining some of those costs a little bit.
There could very well be some savings within that whole.
We had some upfront startups.
Yeah.
Where does the housing fit in?
There's $80,000 payments come out twice a year.
You mean the rent? Or
Yeah, like where does it?
The rent would be under the police. There's a base fare for rental, it's in the police.
Okay.
The cost for the barracks, so that's under capital projects.
Right.
That's not allocated to the police.
That's a good point. You look at
Some of the
your,
maintenance, some of the ongoing maintenance with the barracks is attributed to CSOs, but not the capital cost of the building.
so you look at $430,000 for actual expenses for police and CSOs versus the 275. So that's, anyway, I've got, actually, Ron's got a good spreadsheet on that, and I'm just going to do some work on it. So we're getting the budgets. That's how we can sort of try to get Peter to pay for Paul and try to do all the things that we want to do.
Well, the police board is responsible for doing the police budget, presenting it to council. We can tweak it, but pretty rare.
You approve the budget for the
We
police.
approve the budget, yeah.
If you ask them to decrease 20%, then they gotta do what they, well, they don't have to, they can try.
But
But
police
that's their
board
request.
doesn't do CSO.
No, they don't do CSO. We do CSO, but the police board is responsible for
I have some information.
There had been times when we've sent it back to rethink a couple of items.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to police. Erwin.
A couple of things. We have a report that Mike Barbanovich has put together, which I think is a great improvement. He's giving us a report on an annual basis for police activity on a month-by-month basis. There were 73 incidents that police responded to in one way or the other during October. The responses, there was two responses for an alarm. There was one arrest. I don't know what it was. There were no bear problems. I guess all the bears have gone to sleep, which is good. There was one attempted break and enter. There was another actual break and enter. And on that point, please be mindful if you see vehicles cruising around the area that you don't recognize, don't hesitate to call the police, and they will make an effort to check the situation. This is the tough time of year. Snow hasn't come in to stop the process of removing assets from cottages, so this is our most vulnerable time of year. There was a public meeting today of the police board. I was unable to attend because I was at the training session.
It was just
Today.
police board meeting.
Sorry, yesterday, sorry, thank you. Yesterday and today kind of blurred together.
Yeah, that's it.
Regretfully, no one from the public attended, so I think the police board is going to have to do a little work on improving notification of when these events
Agreed.
are going to take place.
Strongly agree.
The board then went into their regular board meeting after the public session, and they have begun their preliminary work on their budget next year. We'll have more details on that coming forward shortly. Questions?
Well done.
Thank you. We'll move on to fire. Steve, do you have fire chief's report?
So there were 4 calls this month. 2 calls were on the arm of Alexander. Both calls were related to trees in contact with hydro lines. There's no damage to the properties with for those 2 calls. There was also 1 call to the RM of Victoria Beach. This call was to assist the RCMP with recovering a person from the area of Scotts Point. The fire department continues to use a boat that is part of our MOU agreements and our personnel to help with this difficult recovery. We had 1 mutual aid call this month to assist East Beaches Fire Department with the structure fire, and the fire department is back into their regular training schedule and will continue to maintain their practices and gear. So that's pretty much it. It was a fairly quiet month this month.
I had an opportunity to talk to Brad the other day and our fire chief, and that Mamek Truck and Trailer, Manitoba Association of
Emergency coordinator.
emergency measure, whatever. The emergency coordinator's vehicle and trailer is still in our yard. It will be going back shortly or in the next little bit. We still have a couple pumps that are out of the water, which is starting to freeze, but the Kubota and Big Red, our tractor, are still in place just in case there's any high wind events or storm events. But things are starting to freeze, but they're not, it's not like you should be walking out on the lake.
We also need to put forward a motion, I think, and to start and get some support from other RMs to send to the to the AMM regarding the dike levels in the province, and because right now they're set at 722, which, as we know, is no longer adequate. So given that everything is appearing to be calm now, and we may be in the clear, I think that now would be a good time to start to get other RMs involved, because if we face the same thing next year, the fire department, the police, and the RM is going to be hard pressed to try to hold back the water once again. You know, a lot of communities flooded, so I think that we would get a lot of support for such a motion, and really the AMM is the place to do it.
Right. We're too late for the meeting next week for sure, but there's June district meetings, right? And they always send a reminder to put resolutions forward.
Yeah.
Yep, there are, and the one thing when I was speaking to the president of the AMM a little while ago, that he was saying that while the resolutions are fantastic and really show how much support there is for any resolution that's put on the floor, is that we can still put in a request for the AMM to try to follow up on that. So we might be able to do it 2 ways. One where we are making the direct request to the AMM and see if they want to push it forward, and they can go through their regular process. And if they do not choose to do that, then we can put it forward as a resolution in the next meeting. So I think that might be the way to move forward from here.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments?
No.
All right, thank you. I don't have anything for parks or special events. It's not that time of year. Councillor Randall, municipal buildings.
Thank you. 3 items of interest for this month's report. The Pit Road Beach access and toilet. A meeting is being planned with representatives of the Archdiocese to agree on a revised location of the gravel parking pad access off Safi Road. My report mentions that a revised drawing will follow. Well, I've already sent out the revised drawings earlier today for everyone to take a look at. Lon has reminded us of the windows of opportunity to meet with the Archdiocese, and I think we generally like the December 5th for as many of us as possible to attend to sort out the details. Eddie, do you have any other light you might want to shed on this issue?
Not particularly. We not Not particularly. I want to meet with the Archdiocese and have a look at the site, and then we can move forward.
All right, and you got the new improved drawings? that
I
sent out
haven't
today?
looked at it. We were in that.
Yeah,
meeting
well,
all
that's
day
fine. I
today.
wanted to get it.
Did all of council get that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, and, Randy as well, just to set the stage for the discussions on revising the location of the gravel pad for a number of reasons. Number 2, the Village Green accessible washroom, and this is very much a good news scenario. We're looking at a cost sharing arrangement is being considered for the supply of hydropower to the proposed facility. Our partner would be the tennis group, the Tennis Initiative Fundraising Drive. One of their key members, who happens to be a electrical contractor who's done a lot of work for the RM, he's applying for a permit, and he's offered to cost share with us. In other words, save us some money on the electrical portion of the Village Green washroom project. So we welcome that, and we're working out the details with them now.
What's the status of the grant?
We haven't heard.
We haven't heard yet. We are hopeful that it will go through. And you'll recall the dollar figures and the fact that the way it's structured, we're committed to 20% of the total costs. But on the Village Green washroom, our grant writer was able to use the flat rate scheme, which is far more money than we've had quoted by an independent contractor. So it's looking pretty good. And if we could save a few more dollars on the 20% that we have to ante up, thanks in part to the tennis group, so far so good.
So we're talking about the grant just for the washrooms.
What is single washroom? A fully accessible washroom with holding tank, with water, the whole thing. And we've already picked out, thanks to our electrical contractor Contact, he's already picked out where the service could be located, bigger the line in from the pole, and he's offered to contribute the labor. So that's a good news issue. And last but not least, the dear old Moonlight Inn. It's not going to go away. Well, I personally don't intend to ever let it go away. But having said that, you should be well aware by now that a prominent Victoria Beach resident is offered to engage the services of a Winnipeg architect to develop complete plans and specifications for the project on his dime. This is a huge step forward in comparing.
Ian is not the problem.
Well, he's the money guy. That's what it is to him. This is a huge step forward in preparing for the eventual public meeting and private fundraising initiative. A last minute addenda to my report, which I've written in by hand, is the architect who has been selected, Dean Stuyvesant from the Unit 7, Severson from the Unit 7 architectural group. He's visited the inn with Penny, taken a look at it. He called me earlier today, and I'm going over to meet him at his offices either this Friday or Monday to go over the massive detail I've been able to share with him so far. So this is coming along very nicely. He's very, very pleased that he's got this project, and he's most enthusiastic about it. And I don't know if touring the building with Penny might have taken some of the novelty off of it, but he still seems to be very enthusiastic.
Yeah, well, and he's a resident, he's a cottager, so
Yes.
he has an attachment to the building.
Yeah, that's
So
what
it's a
we did.
grand old building. Somehow we're gonna figure it out.
We own the building.
We
Yes.
own the building.
Yeah.
So Graham, we've talked about this before. So do you have some specific ideas in terms of timing for consultation process with the key people and then subsequently with the community at large in terms of plans going?
Well, it would have to be in Winnipeg if it was going to be held during the winter. I'm talking about the public meeting that we have been going around in circles on. We might not get very much attendance at that. I think we have to hold off until May.
Get the plans and then organize the meeting.
Exactly. So with Dean's help and also continuing interest and input from Mr. Doug Pollard, who runs a world-class printing press, we should be able to get the plans, the specs translated into large easel board presentations and make a coherent, feeling meaningful presentation to the public. And they will help us decide then and there whether to proceed with this or not and how to finance it. And every indication that we've got is that there's going to be wholehearted support for this. And it certainly doesn't do any harm that the RM is able to issue tax deduction checks for donations to the cause.
I was just wondering about the laundry list of things that you want to do with that building. I know we talked about raising it up tonight.
That's what I'm going to go through with the, we have
I was just wondering who's making those decisions or where are the ideas coming from?
the ideas have come from me and from a interior designer and from the current leaseholder and from a well-respected foundation contractor and some from our building inspector. It's a kind of a group effort and quite a meaningful input from Irwin as far as a potential funding model. This is all finally starting to come together, and I'll go through it with Dean in detail, and he will come up with something that we can present to the public.
To be clear, to date, no municipal funds have been expended.
Not one of them.
There was some talk about doing some remedial work on the Moonlight Inn, and I think that idea was pretty much set aside.
It's still an issue.
It's still there, but it's,
yeah.
I think that the idea was, let's wait until we have a bigger picture before we do the remedial.
And this is what the architect is going to be able to do. He's going to be able to bring everything together.
And the timelines and the players.
Yeah, and the other piece of information that we've gathered over the last 2.5 years
Yeah.
has been an engineering report, and we did pay for that. It was $600.
Well, we made a token payment.
donation again, another resident came forward and said, "I'd like to help."
Yeah.
So we do have an engineering report, not a, I guess, a full engineering report, but it's pretty substantial.
Well, of the building the way it stands right now, it's very substantial.
And we also have a report done by the company who we contract on a monthly basis, or annually, Safety Services Manitoba went in. So we've got a lot of pieces, and we're hopeful that the architects can pull it all together.
Yeah, and so my meeting with Dean will be to put all this in context.
On the table.
Yeah, so that he can advance it forward from there. So the Moonlight Inn, the prognosis is definitely on the positive side.
That's great.
It's on life support currently.
So is it possible to see the laundry list of things that you're thinking, that whole groups, all those groups are thinking of doing? Because I haven't seen it, so I have no idea.
Yeah,
What's
been
involved?
bits and pieces emailed to council over time.
Just a list.
If you like, he and I could,
So it's maybe a little premature. Let's let.
well, it's these drawings and this, see, all the drawings are open to discussion now that we have an architect and he will impose his will on whatever we design. Yeah, I could send you some bits and pieces.
I'm not looking for drawings. I just thought just bullet points. You know, we want to raise the building. We want to put a fire escape. I mean, all the different things, big picture items.
I don't think that list has actually been reviewed and quantified or qualified.
I'm just thinking about where we are now. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it's going to change, but
No,
have
I-
no idea what you're talking about.
No, it's a very good suggestion, and I will work on boiling it all down to something that's digestible. And I'll share it with, the council has seen bits and pieces of this whole thing over the last 2 years, but you unfortunately, you weren't there. So I'll design this with you in mind, but
Just
it'll
bullets
benefit all of us.
I don't really need any numbers. I just wanted to get an idea what you're thinking.
Looking at. Steve's had his hand up. He's very patient.
Fairly substantial.
I was just going to say, just so that the taxpayers don't think that we're sort of half-assing this, we know exactly what the safety issues are that need to be addressed. And yes, we do have a list there as to what absolutely has to be done to make that building safe and up to code. It's the additional odds and ends and the flourishes inside of the building that we don't have a list of, but the safety issues, we know exactly what we need to do.
Mhm. Yep. So I'll be happy to work on that, and I appreciate your interest.
I think I mentioned probably last meeting or the meeting before, I do know somebody that's interested in helping with fundraising. So when you get to that stage, let me know.
Okay.
This way we'd love to help.
Great. All right. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Communications. I don't have a whole lot. Haven't really been using Facebook a lot. I put a couple things up there recently, but I'm not going to inundate folks unless there's something to say.
Yeah, it's the slow time of the year. There's nothing really to
Yeah.
Again, the primary thing is sign up for Connect, use your Victoria Beach address, and outside of that, there's really not too much.
All right, thank you. Then we move on to the building inspector. Back to Councillor Randall.
Okay, this comes to us courtesy of our building inspector, Curtis Baudouin. This is his report for the month of August. I'm sorry, the month of October 2022. There was, things were starting to slow down a little bit. There was one renovation, one main building, one demolition, one public washroom, 2 additions. I think the public washroom was, we had to apply for a permit for the, you know what?
Yeah.
2 additions, 1 garage, 1 shed, 1 bunk, and 1 deck. Total value of permits for the month was $987,000. And year to date, that brings us to $6,200,000 in permits. Now that's going to be a little bit less than the 10 million plus we achieved last year, but that was just an exceptional year. The fun part that'll interest Ian, of course, is that the fees collected year to date are $6,500 in October for a total of $66,000 year to date, which more than pays for the building inspector.
No.
No.
Oh yeah, come on.
No.
No.
Enough for you.
All right.
No. Steve?
I don't think that it's unreasonable for us to begin to start expecting that the revenues coming in for the permits is going to start dropping and going back to what we have been accustomed to seeing in the past. And I just wanted to raise the issue that I think that, again, and I've mentioned this several times, that we need to start looking at the cost of the building inspector. And when you take out a permit, it should cover the cost of the building inspector to come out and issue that permit. There's no reason that the whole RM needs to pay for somebody's permit. It's just not, I understand that there's hesitancy in terms of cost and everything else, but at the end of the day, I'm building a building and I need to accept the costs that are associated with that building. So it's just moving forward, since again, I think it's reasonable to expect the revenues there to drop. It's not going to pay for the building inspector anymore. And if you're building, you need to pay.
Yeah.
There is an element to the building inspector that I think should be borne by the community at large. That the building inspector is there to maintain a a certain standard for the community, which benefits the entire,
Yeah. Well,
you know, should 100% of the building inspectors' costs be covered by the building permits? Majority should be, but not, I don't think it's all.
I think we can agree that
The insurance policy for the community to make sure that the building standards throughout the municipality.
we've come close to it. I think we can agree. And last year we almost beat it. But if we confine the cost of the building inspector purely to inspecting these buildings, I think it more than covers this. What I wanted to stay there is that Curtis provides a very valuable function in terms of safety. He's on the lookout all the time for safety related items. He travels back and forth regularly, and he does a very good job protecting our best interests. He makes a contribution to zoning and other areas. So if this doesn't cover the full building inspector, it's because he does a lot of stuff outside, above and beyond the call of building inspection duties.
Is he full-time? That's 12 months. So what is he really doing between now and sort of April?
He has inspections. He has a lot of
There's
plans.
construction all winter.
There is construction all winter, yeah.
He travels out 2 days a week. He's out there in his office, and as many other additional trips as is necessary as the demand requires. He's able to do a fair amount of it by email back and forth. But he's a full-time employee. Yeah, and he's certainly worth his weight.
But essentially, the taxpayers are subsidizing the permits.
Well, I don't think that's unreasonable, as Erwin pointed out.
Well,
To everyone's benefit.
Yeah, when you consider that.
But under that logic, if I build a house, is the taxpayer going to subsidize the construction of the house? I mean, you know, exactly, like the builder, the purchaser of that building is going to pay all the expenses. And I think that the permits for you creating that house or erecting that building, this is just one of those costs. And I think it's
I'm not
unreasonable
understanding
for.
that. Steve, I'm not understanding how the taxpayer is subsidizing the building inspector's salary if you're collecting $66,000 in fees for permits.
Well, that doesn't
So-
cover
That's-
auto expenses.
Yeah,
Erwin,
and
Well, I would just say that the RM is responsible to make sure that people are building all their structures to code and pulling permits as they need it, and you do need to have an inspector and someone full-time to make sure that everything's happening according to.
Yeah, for the benefit
The
of all.
building code and to our bylaws, right there.
And I don't know that you can tie his building inspector's salary to construction. Because, okay, this year we're at 6.2 million. Last year we were at 10. That's great. What if you go down to 2 million? Are you going to then tell the building inspector, whoever it may be, because I don't think that's a fair value. Are you going to tell them when they get down to $2 million in building permit fees that that's what they're getting, that their percentage is coming out of there? I mean, you know,
no, what it is that you just simply take in the cost of the transportation that Curtis is going to have every time he goes up, as well as the wage that we'd be paying him for that time. It's pretty easy to calculate that. He'd be able to give us a rough figure as to how much time he usually it takes him to do one inspection. You just take that average, you add it into the transportation that costs to the RM, and you just have a base fee that's based on that expense to the RM. And so it's not for
I guess from a
everything.
CAO perspective, Steve, I'm not sure what you want to get at. Do you want to decrease the amount of budget that you're spending in the building and municipal buildings and inspections, or?
No, I want to increase the permits.
You want to increase the permits? You want to increase the permit fees, increase the revenues? Well, that's something to look at. I don't know if that's possible. It's kind of a discretionary or variable source of income for the RM that's almost
Well, we look at
next
it
to
every
impossible
year.
to control or predict.
We'll look at it.
but I think having a discussion about the building inspector and his wages is inappropriate.
That's right. And I
Right
think
now.
we've gone way too far down gratuitous
Yeah.
remark that I made. So
We'll review it at budget time.
that's fine. Good for you.
I just want to ask one question. When you talk about $10 million, what is that number?
Total construction cost.
Market value of what's being
Yeah.
done.
So that's, so 10 million, so $6 million of new assets been built this year?
Yep.
Okay.
$10,000 deck, $500,000 cottage.
Great.
Yep.
$50,000 garage. Yeah, it all adds up to.
We don't see that. We do eventually in taxes, but we don't, we don't get.
So where does that number come from? Is it like if I'm going to build an addition, do I tell you that I'm spending $100,000 or
Yes.
that's the way it works?
Yeah.
There's no easy way to audit that. At the end of the day, though, the building gets added onto our tax base, and that is,
Yeah.
reviewed by the assessment.
There are well-used rules of thumb for cost per square foot for this kind of construction, the other kind of construction.
Curtis has got a good background in
That's right.
construction, so if you say, well, I'm gonna spend $5,000 on a deck, and you say, no.
Yeah,
Maybe material.
That's for some
that's
stuff.
right. Well, bless their hearts, the permit applicant does have a tendency to understate what it's really going to cost. And Curtis does a pretty good job of bringing them up to reality, which the assessments eventually support rather nicely.
Most of the work is done by contract.
Yeah.
So he could in fact do an audit. The occasional do-it-yourselfer will build a small addition deck on that. So
Yeah, but it's more convenient for us to let the assessors catch up.
we eventually get our pound of flesh.
That's right.
Okay.
Enough on that. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Heritage and Trails, Steve, do you have anything?
Did we miss accessibility?
Pardon me, we did, you're right. It's pretty much been covered. We've applied for a grant. We're waiting to hear back on a standalone accessible washroom in the Village Green. Yeah, we're waiting on a response. And if the submission to Manitoba Hydro from the tennis committee does happen to come to pass, our washroom can tap into that literally and figuratively, and we could then have literally a hands-free washroom. Right, the taps could come on, the door could close, the lights could come on, as long as the power source is close enough.
And then just the doctor's office, we didn't touch on that, but I don't have a report because the doctor's office has been shut down. So just so we're following through with everything. As for trails and heritage, I'll just skip over heritage and just go straight to trail. Actually, for heritage, again, volunteer awards, please get those in to recognize members of the community. And for trails, the cross-country ski groomers are not out yet because we are not at for the depth 4 inches, or is it 8?
8 inches.
We're not 8 inches. We're not at the depth necessary to run the groomer.
No. Some friends of mine were biking on the trails in Victoria Beach on the weekend, and they said they're mostly cleared and passable and in pretty good shape. So, good. All right. Anything further on our committee reports? We have resolved to accept the monthly committee reports as presented. May I have a mover? Thank you. Steve, do you want to get your hand up? Second this motion?
There we go.
Thank you. Any further discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Move on to accounts and finances. Be it resolved that the following list of accounts be approved for payment. Accounts payable checks 10735 to 10783 in the amount of $128,393.16. May I have a mover? Ian, thank you. Second. Graham, thank you. Any discussion, Ian?
I can point out that there were 48 checks written for $128,000, 100, but 5 checks over 5,000. So straightforward.
Any other comments, John?
I don't think there are any irregularities in the accounts payable.
Routine.
All right, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Business arising from the previous meeting, we're still waiting for some information on recycling contracting,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that was tabled at the last meeting.
Nothing. You're still collecting.
I'm still trying to get
collecting
better quotes and better
Yep.
information.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on to other business, equipment purchase. So we have a resolution in front of us that says, be it resolved to approve the purchase of 2012 Peterbilt bump truck, maybe a dump truck.
Yeah, dump box. Beast, not yet.
Yeah, as attached in Schedule A, up to the amount of 69,000 plus applicable taxes. Further be it resolved to transfer funds from the equipment reserve to pay for this purchase plus PST. May I have a mover? One. Come on, Steve, thank you. Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Graham. This has come up, thank you for seconding and moving that motion. This has come up because many of the jobs Public Works does or do require a dump truck. And this Peterbilt dump truck would replace our Ford L8000, right? Did you want to talk to this or do you want me to? Okay. It would be for hauling gravel, soil, snow, brush, rocks, etc. It would be a very good multi-use vehicle for Public Works. The L8000 Ford is a 1992 model. It's a plow dump truck and it's falling apart. The box is beyond repair due to rust. Parts are extremely hard to find and are becoming very expensive. The cost to safety and repair the vehicle is not worth the investment to keep it operational. Our mechanic and one of our Public Works employees went into the city, looked at the vehicle, test drove it. It's a 2012 Peterbilt diesel dump truck listed at $69,000. There's a brand new $25,000 dump box installed. After talking with the owner, he may be willing to negotiate a slightly lower price of $67,500. The truck currently does not have a plow system, so we would need to purchase this at a later date. The other comment is our GMC 5500 currently has a plow and a flat deck. We would like to try to get a dump box for that truck in the near future to help with brush pickup, hauling, gravel, and landscaping. A new dump box would cost about $25,000. We base this on the fact that Public Works will potentially be taking over the brush pickup moving forward. Reliable and right vehicle needs to be available for this. Reliable and correct vehicle needs to be available for this and other work. Having a Peterbilt truck would eventually, having this Peterbilt truck and eventually having it set up with plow should provide Public Works with a multi-use vehicle for some time. Converting the GMC 5500 to a dump box as well as the Peterbilt purchase provide municipality with two vehicles for snow, brush, gravel, etc., and less need to contract out for brush pickup. That's Public Works consideration.
Do we have any idea how many hours are on the
Per kilometers.
Well, kilometers are not a good
More hours.
way to measure trucks. It's the number of hours on each. Because this truck doesn't drive a lot of miles. It's not like a long haul.
There's 380,000 kilometers.
I don't know what's on the current one. It's just 380 is up.
380 is on the Peterbilt.
Yeah.
That seems-
We don't have any status on the engine. Has it been rebuilt or?
It's a PX 6.7 diesel, 260 horsepower engine.
We don't know the type of maintenance it's had over the years.
It almost, unless it was provided in the report.
It wasn't provided.
The mayor, the mechanic did go down and look at it though, with the assistant lead hand.
Yeah.
And under, did a thorough inspection on it. For the price, you get what you pay for too, right? So you have to look at something that's in budget.
New truck would be 200.
Or 25.
Probably more, yeah. Dump box.
Could the existing snow equipment on the old truck be located on the new truck?
No, it doesn't sound like.
had a couple of comments. I assume that the new blade for this new truck and then the other dump box referred to, they will be part of 2023 budget and expenditures. So this is it for this year. As far as equipment, I've heard some concern about the amount of equipment that our works have. Personally, I don't have any real problem with it, but I would like to see an up-to-date inventory. Exactly how many vehicles do we have? Last time I drove by, I counted, it looked like half a dozen pickup trucks and 3 or 4 dump trucks. And that's just idle speculation. I would like an inventory of what we have.
They have that.
Presumably, there's 1 or 2 of those items will be stroked off, and we're not going to pay. We've been guilty of paying to register a vehicle for another year, long after it's reached its past its best before date. I'd like to see an inventory of our vehicles. So those are my comments, but I support this resolution nevertheless.
How much of our equipment reserve will be left by this year?
I had all this written down, should run. I think there's 275,000. So with another 225 going into it next year, that bring it up to 5 minus 70. So it's pretty healthy still.
Where's the 100,000 that we created a reserve?
Started with 100, we increased it to 200.
Yeah.
We added another 100 last year.
You had a 200,000 this year, yes, and then 100,000 2021. So
Yeah.
there's a healthy balance in there now.
Yeah.
I think it's 275 is what it is right now.
That's great.
The original one was earmarked for the fire truck. It seems like other things get in the way, and the fire truck's probably $500,000.
At least $500,000, I would say.
Yeah,
But
it's a big number. But my concern,
at the current rate of investment, you have that money in cash by 2024. So by the time you get an RFP out for a fire truck and you actually get it built and delivered,
2 more years.
yeah, it's not going to happen next year. Could be 2 to 3 years, yeah.
Delay for delivery on trucks is a couple of years.
Yeah.
Well, that allows us to get.
But my point is that, we plan for it, and then we find something else comes along and eats into it. Well, that's my concern. I think
Well, that's why you have an equipment reserve, though.
Well,
You can't
we may have
predict
to
when
take
you
a look
need
at-
stuff. And
we may have to take a look at increasing that again in 2023.
yeah, that's a good investment per year for this size of municipality.
We've got a lot of rusty equipment out there.
Well, and that's part of the problem, right? So our equipment is old and it's starting to,
Yeah.
Well,
fall
last
apart.
spring, the wheels fell off a truck.
That's right.
Budget talks are, you want to put,
Yeah.
But
money's got to come from somewhere.
well, we're taking less out of it than we
Well,
have to into it.
Yeah, something. Or maybe sell some of this old inventory.
That's what I like.
I was going to say that, I mean, as frustrating as this is to say, it's the reality is that for years, the RM did not maintain a solid plan for the replacement of, its assets for when they eventually died. We sort of maintained the status quo with our reserves, and it's coming back and hitting us in the head with like a baseball bat. But the reality is that we have these expenses, and until we sort of get all of our assets all fixed up, and in many cases, unfortunately replaced, this is going to keep happening. So, well, yeah, Erwin, like I hear you, like it's frustrating. But I mean, what are you going to do? We need a dump truck for a whole slew of reasons. And so what's our alternative? Try to lease it out somewhere? I mean, that's not going to be efficient or affordable. So I mean, it's unfortunately one of the things that we need. I think that our public works staff, I mean, they do an exceptional job in trying to track down the most reasonably affordable items that we can, but
My concern, it's now middle of November. The current truck was the main snow plow truck for the winter, the one that is no longer functioning.
Use the grader too.
Use the grader. But the old dump truck was the main V plow. Are we gonna be able to replace that capacity in time for winter snow clearing?
Well, the other one is still operational. It's not like it's dead on the side of the road. It still works. They just would like to, replace that because it's not going to last much longer. That other GMC, the 3500 or whatever that truck is, that's the next one that needs to be replaced.
But
I think that's the one
your point is that we buy this truck won't be used to plow snow.
I don't think so.
Because you don't have a plow.
That's part of 2023 budget, so.
Well, look,
I have a couple of points.
But the current truck we have is operational.
It's still
for both.
operational.
This is, they're operational now.
And I-
So
My point is,
they're on their
it's not a
last leg.
sense of urgency then. If we buy this truck next week, it's not like they're gonna use it to plow the snow this winter.
Not just.
No, but the sense of urgency is you don't see these very often, and this is a great truck, and it'll probably be gone in 3 weeks if you don't buy it. The reason it's come to this because the sales rep was asking us if we're interested, because they have other buyers.
private sale by looks of it.
But he can't verify it, but he says he has other offers. He wants to know.
Has anybody looked at any other options?
Yes, our lead hand has been on for all summer looking at different equipment.
Did they come up with some other options?
I think these.
Couldn't find one truck.
Not for this kind of price. In this kind of shape, is my understanding.
And we should also look at, as we replace defunct or nearly dead vehicles, we should dispose of these defunct vehicles rather than allow them to pile up in the backyard of Public Works. Sell them off. If it's worth nothing, okay, then we'll get nothing for it, but at least it's gone.
But some of the parts.
That's a topic for another day.
Yep.
But Public Works is asking if we would consider this because as Lon said,
It looks to be.
This is a unanimous want from all the members of the Public Works Department, and I was told it's a no-brainer from them as far as the need that they would use it, and it's a good truck and it's worth the money.
Well, we have.
That was from 3 different people.
Right. But I was just wondering, for example, I think maybe even Steve mentioned it. You can get used equipment and lease. So it's just another way of financing. Maybe it could be done this way. I don't know. So, certainly the thing that popped up in my mind, I mentioned that to you this morning, 380,000 kilometers on any vehicle is a lot of vehicles. Even it is a diesel, so they're good for a
Given
certain
the
amount.
semi-truck industry in the world, they got a diesel engine, that may not be that many miles. It sounds like it from a personal vehicle point of view, but from a semi-truck and a diesel engine, it's not too bad. Yeah. I'm not a mechanic
This is not a
myself,
long
but
call.
No, I appreciate that. I'm just making the point that to get some assurance that somebody's done some research into this, because I don't mind spending more money getting a vehicle that has less years on it and less kilometers. Because as you point out, we're going to have to replace it anyways. And I hate to have to turn around and replace this thing 2 years from now or find out you've got another $40,000 of expenses because this thing, it's got a lot of hours and a lot of miles on it. So
Well,
that's all I'm thinking.
Yeah,
I'm not saying no to this, but it doesn't sound like anybody's really done any research on this other than responding to a phone call, somebody has something for sale.
the department head has done a lot of research on it.
Yeah.
It's not just a whim. This has been going from.
I'm not suggesting it's a win, but
Well, you just did, sorry. You said it was a phone call in here, so.
well, that's what you were implying, that.
No, they-
No, I'm not applying. We've been looking at it for months and they inspected it. They looked at it. They need this. They've been looking for something like this for a long time. So that is my recommendation, yes, based on the feedback from the Public Works and their inspection of it.
Right, and this goes hand in hand with the faith that we have in our Public Works group. They've been looking hard. They've been thinking about replacement truck for quite some time, and they've pursued God knows how many different leads. So, do we believe what our Public Works people tell us or not? Oh, yes, we do.
I mean,
I don't
on
think
the
that's
other.
the issue at all, though, Graham.
Yeah.
And it's not a question of believing them. I'm asking the question as I've never seen any other option. So I'm just asking a simple question. How many options have you seen?
Not many.
There aren't many. I
It's the
understand.
same thing with the wood chipper that we were discussing.
Yeah.
The trucks are very much in short supply at this time. If you want to spend more money and you want to look at other options, I mean, Public Works would love that. I mean, it would help the.
Like, how old is the?
I don't know how much money you want to spend.
How old is the GMC truck?
I don't have all that. That would be
Uh,
the one that is replacing.
I don't. It might be
For the truck,
It's all
replacing. Is that
the two they need to be
92?
replaced.
The 92 Ford is falling apart, and
That's the big dump truck.
that's what this would be replacing. The GMC 5500 currently has a plow and a flat deck, so we do still have
That's
that
only
one.
a 3-ton. It's just a big pickup.
Yeah, but I think that's one with the V
It's
blade
got
on
a
it.
small V on the front.
And then we have the grader as well.
Did they put a V on the grader?
I don't know.
I don't know, David. Well, there's one collecting rust in front of the entrance.
Yeah,
Well,
But back to this one. They did do I would have to say they did do their research. They did go out, they did drive it. Dylan was over under it and around it, inside the engine.
Dylan's our mechanic.
Dylan is our diesel mechanic.
Right.
They have been looking, Trevor's been looking, Dane's been looking, they've all been looking. And there's really not much out there. If we want to spend 200,000 or 100,000 on a brand new one,
I wouldn't touch it.
100 wouldn't touch it. All right. So this, in their minds, was a very good deal for the vehicle that was.
But has there anybody looked at a new one and leased it and find out what the payments are? What the terms are on that? Then you solve your problem for the next 15 years?
Something for 15 years? Is
Well,
that-
I don't know what the
Yeah,
term would
I
be.
don't know.
I'm saying, but the truck should last 15 years if it was new. Like, we're not going to put 380,000 kilometers on this truck.
We probably won't.
Yeah, I'm just discussing. I
Yeah. no,
was
I
simply
appreciate
asking the
that.
question, has there been any other emails of other trucks that they come up with that said, here's one?
Well, Ian, I think we have to rely on good judgment or lead hand on a diesel mechanic. The diesel mechanic has demonstrated considerable skills as a mechanic. I mean, what do I know about trucks? What do you know about trucks?
That's true.
The people who operate them and fix them are the people that are saying, this looks like a good deal. To consider leasing, you're just going to be paying someone else a higher interest cost. I mean, in the long run, buying brand new and getting warranty is probably the least expensive way to go, but we don't have the financial resources to do that.
If lease was an option and you want to have that on the table as an option to look at it, I can do that. I just didn't think that this council wanted to do that. So we look at purchases such as this, that
We have a situation where we don't use the truck a lot. It doesn't in a ton of hours and not a lot of kilometers because, it's in and around the municipality. They're going
It might go
5
to the
miles here,
It might
10
go to-
miles over there. It's not like they're going hauling, long haul back or even
Right.
hauling from Gull Lake gravel pit. A truck like this could last a good long time.
I'm all for financing a vehicle. One of the things that does drive me a little bit crazy since I got on council is that we always pay for everything flat out. Although I understand the interest costs and everything else like that. I'm like, Lon, how pressing is it that we pass this?
Good deals don't last.
well, yeah. I mean, if you want to explore other options, honestly, I'd have to talk to the lead hand in Public Works to get the true state of the urgency of replacing the truck. It just,
impression if we delay, it'll disappear on us.
I'm very much in favor of moving
Again.
forward, only because I do trust our mechanics, especially if they've really been thoroughly over it. I don't like the idea of spending $69,000, especially right now. But again, as I mentioned, we've let this go. Not this council, but previous councils have let this go for far too long and didn't develop any sort of plan for replacement. So I think it's necessary. But if Ian is really adamant that we take a look at some other options or explore some other options, then maybe we table it for a meeting. I am prepared to move forward on it now, but I'm also prepared to hear Ian out on this and support him in tabling it if he wants.
Yeah, no,
I could look into a lease versus buy option. I mean, that's typical analysis for financial and capital projects like vehicles and such. I just didn't go down that road because I didn't know we wanted to spend much more.
Well, it's been moved and seconded.
Afford to spend too much.
And one of the points the guys make is the cost to safety and repair this vehicle is not worth the investment to keep it operational.
Vehicle that way has to be safety.
is this vehicle safety, this new one?
Yes.
All right, well, it's been moved and seconded, and we've had a productive discussion.
So
So, a fresh safety.
Yeah, they have to be safetied every year. If they're over a certain weight.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, Ian's point, if I may just say, I think we're not getting sort of a real good feeling because you and I are at a distance from the public works. You obviously have a good feeling, but recommendation is coming forward. I appreciate you saying. I think we need to take, going forward, we need to take a realistic look at what our fleet is made up of. What's likely to be, you know, going to the junkyard, and what do we need to do on a going forward basis?
Right.
It's just good, simple fleet maintenance.
Well,
And then we can begin to quantify what the annual expenditures might be and develop a plan. Like it's been, you know what it is? When the wheels fall off, you got to do something. And the wheels are falling off, so we've got to do something. So, but I think we need to take a more planned view going forward in terms of our fleet.
I mean, I can always
I'll
follow
just add to that. It's not a question of not trusting anybody, but we've learned this at this workshop the last 2 days. We should have a report on this. Somebody should say, we've looked the last 4 months on,
the report.
but not showing me any other options. It's not showing me what they've looked at over the last 5 months. It's not suggesting that there's.
This is their recommendation.
No, I understand the recommendation, and I believe that the mechanic has looked at it and he thinks it's a great truck. I'm just, like in business, this wouldn't fly. I couldn't go to the board and say I want to spend $70,000 without explaining, well, like, look at this option, I looked at that option, you know.
I know, I can help you out a little bit there. I know they did look at another truck. It was a smaller box and it was less money, but they felt, I think it was less money, now that I say that. But the box itself was smaller and they just felt it wasn't going to be as useful. It might have been. I don't want to say any more in case I get it wrong, but I know they did look at least one more and they did go and have a look at it. They tell me that they're hard to come by. And this one seems to be a good deal for them.
And I can believe that they're hard to come by. I guess I was just looking for a little bit more meat to the
A little more
report.
paper.
Well, just something to say, well, we looked at buying one new, this is what it costs, leasing, this is what it costs, used, this is what you get. Just a little bit more analysis than just sort of, here's one, it's a good buy and it's $70,000 and let's approve it. But I'm all set to approve it. Next time, I'd like to see a bit more details on it.
I agree.
Yeah, that's.
I think we need to take a couple steps back and look at the overall fleet.
Right, and the type of analysis you're looking at, it's well reasoned, and I agree with it. But that may be somewhat beyond the time and capability of our public works staff. I think Lon would have to help with that.
And that's a very good point, because, you know, they're in summertime, they're heavy on doing what they're supposed to be doing, fixing things. Graveling roads and so forth. Summertime, they don't have a lot of free time.
Steve's been very patient.
I'm just basically just trying to translate what Ian's really talking about here, which is just ensuring that we standardize our acquisition process so that we have clear set process of documentation and reporting. So I don't think that that's something that's too difficult to do. I think again, still trying to play a little bit of catch up here in terms of a lot of our processes, and we still have a ways to go. I'm 100% in favor of working to ensure that we have a standardized process so that we have a good reporting system from now on. And so maybe that's something that we can absolutely look into. For now, though, I would say that we should probably call the vote.
Thanks, Steve. I agree.
Well, I'm just going to add, you do have a standardized RFP procurement model, and sometimes you cannot find 3 oranges to compare each other. We found an orange. It's big, beautiful, bright, good price. The people that are using it want it. I can go out and compare apples to it and other prices and smaller trucks, and that's not, and the time and the resources were a smaller M, few staff. This is just highly recommended by our lead hand and several other guys that are mechanics, so it's hard. You could probably, if you want to table it, I would call them the seller, and we'll get to see if you hold on to it for 2 weeks. But
Let's move forward.
Yeah, let's.
All right, gentlemen, great discussion. Thank you. And lots to think about moving forward in terms of some policies from our meeting yesterday and today. So I will call the vote. All those in favor of the dump truck, 2012 Peterbilt dump truck purchase coming out of our equipment reserve. Carried unanimous. Thank you. We heard a lot today about policies, right? Updating policies, putting in new policies. And we do have a lot, but we could use some upgrades.
But I think this is an area that
So thank you, gentlemen.
over time needs some attention.
So the boys have the okay.
Do I get to drive it?
I'm not sure.
I used to drive a dump truck.
All right.
Are we able to drive it through the restricted area?
With the plow it, right?
Yeah, won't be able to have the truck, the dump.
The
box
dump,
out, for sure. All right, moving on to property taxes receivable. There was a request to have a discussion about property taxes and those that are outstanding. We did get a list, and it is substantial. I was actually quite surprised at how much money is outstanding by residents who have not paid their taxes, not just this year, but over a period of time. And Lon and I had a brief discussion about it in one of our breaks yesterday. Lon, if you wanted to add anything to this discussion before we get over to Ian.
you know, it's just kind of a last resort for RMs to, you know, you base your budget and your expenses and your purchase and everything on revenues, and you can have the tax revenue for 1 year, but collecting it is another one if you don't have the cash to pay your bills. And often just the nature of our business is that you have incidences where you need to pay cash to get stuff done, but if you're having a hard time collecting it, you run into situations kind of like we did this year with the brush pickup and the dike repairs, where we had to get cash to pay for this. With the DFA, we may not get the cash for 2 years, but that doesn't help our current cash situation. And so unfortunately, when you see the level of, you know, outstanding taxes owing from 4 to 5 years ago, it can hurt your cash position a little bit. And I think we're in a situation now where, you know, if you allow people to go 3 or 4 years without, you know, having some sort of action to pay for their property taxes, you know, unfortunately, it's, you know, 40 to 50 roll numbers that are, you know, 3 to 4 years past due. And they just need to pay the 1 year for 2018 to get them out of arrears and out of tax sale. So that still leaves taxes for 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. And then in July will be 2023. So now you have 5 years. And it just adds up. Every year you make a resolution, you designate a year that's for anybody that has arrears in that particular year or would be up for tax.
So we
And so-
we could move the arrears sort of deadline up
Yeah,
so that
right.
we wouldn't give them as much grace period, not a grace period, leniency. Don't have to pay.
That's correct. Like in January, you could designate 2022 as the year for tax sale. So anybody owing for 2021, if they don't pay up by the tax sale date, which would be November of next year, so then you would get within 2 years. So the only people outstanding would be 2022 and 2023. And in my experience, that's more than enough accounts receivable period. And it helps you, keep your cash position better. Right now, there's, like I said, we designated 2019 as the year last year, which was 4 years ago. You just have to get a little bit more aggressive.
Well, this report certainly suggests that we're giving too much leniency.
And
We welcome tightening that up.
And it's just a few rolls, maybe every year it's the same kind of situation. Just, it's the hard hand to play. You don't like doing it. Nobody likes doing it, but it forces them to make an arrangement with the RM. They don't have to pay it all today, but they can make arrangements to pay, get them more up to date. So,
The fact that it's growing and growing.
Yeah, it was the same number, the previous year was 467. So it's sort of, it's a habit, right? It's, people realize, I didn't realize you couldn't pay your tax. But then the people aren't thinking about the 18% interest they're paying on that. And then when it comes time to pay up or lose your house, then all of a sudden they like 80%. If they wait the 4 years, it's like almost 80% over and above the value of the tax that they owe. So my thought would be also that you get a lot of disgruntled taxpayers, right?
Well, and everybody else is carrying the burden.
yeah,
Right.
great.
So I like Lon's idea, because we kind of have rolling 4 years, right? Not mistaken. And if you do it, just sort of set it up as 2 years, you would get that 438,000, get that hopefully down to what, 150, which would be a more reasonable number.
It was zero, but
Well, there's only 2 reasons why you don't pay tax. Don't pay them. You don't have the money, or you don't want to pay. You have other things you want to buy, new car, or whatever. Only 2 reasons. Don't have the money, or you got other priorities. And we let them.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's just become a habit, I think, for some people.
We're just sending out notices a little more frequently now since I've been here.
Would you phase it in, like go from 4 to 3 to 2, straight to 2?
Yeah.
What's normal in the other?
So you just go by the municipal act. Maximum 5, minimum 2 to 3 years. Yeah, you can designate the prior year as the year that, so that pushes it back. So to be in arrears in 2022, they have to not pay 2021. So anybody so in 2023, you would collect everything owing, including year 2021.
Well,
So outstanding on this report would just be 2022 and 2023. But it would just be that rolling 2 years of arrears, and that's healthy.
Experience with other municipalities, what sort of, is there a normal out there? Is 2 years normal in your view?
It all just depends on your situation. Some will go longer, but I can imagine their situation would be any better than ours when you do that. I've seen municipalities that have always stayed on it 2 years, that rolling, and this would be cut in half easy.
So come January, we would have to put an amendment through on our bylaw.
You would make a resolution in January. You would do it every year,
Yeah.
We did last year.
Why wait till then?
Because then you can designate, in January, you can designate the prior year. So if you do it now, you designate 2021, which then you'd be on a 3-year rolling.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Steve?
I'm more in favor of saying every 2 years. That may go without saying. The only concern that I have is that people right now, where our economy is, are squeezed to the limit in a lot of cases. And I would be more in favor of, and I'm not sure if we can do this, passing some sort of resolution where we're basically saying starting in 2024 that we're changing it to every 2 years. So not only are you giving these people a little bit of warning to say that, listen, this is coming down the pipe, you need to start saving up for it, but then at the same time, we're not suddenly putting a major squeeze on them during a time where people can barely afford groceries as is.
Well, we can't carry the burden of this present economy on our own shoulders.
Well, it's on everyone's shoulders.
It's on everyone's shoulders, including the taxpayers.
Just the only thing I would say to that is that people, they don't have to pay it all. All they have to do is contact the office and get some sort of payment arrangement with us. If you really want to help people out next year, lower your budget, decrease your taxes for next year. That's really what you can do. This is already, that said, done. You've already sold the car and now the car owner wants you to pay for it.
Yeah, and
Maybe they want 30 grand all at once, but they want maybe 5 a year or something, you know, to get them on some sort of payment plan.
And I'm very much in favor of that. I think one of the things that we may be forgetting is that in some of these cases, or a lot of these cases, I recognize some of these properties. They are historic properties. They've been in their family. They've been in their families for a few generations. Kids have taken them over, and it's more of a struggle for them. And I'm totally in favor of saying 2 years and that's it, that's all. I'm just simply saying that people are squeezed quite a bit, so you might get more properties on our sale list than we would otherwise. And just a 1 year warning that, and again, Graham, we wouldn't have known this had Law not brought this up. So while we can definitely say that, well, you know, they've been costing everybody. They've been costing everybody for a long time. And had Lon not been the fantastic CAO that he is, we would have continued not realizing what a major issue this was.
Clarity, I think we need to thank Ian for poking
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
It was just a discussion we had last week. It was accounts payable and I didn't know what the number was. So I asked Lon, and he said, that's people that owe tax. And I thought, in business, you know, when you have 30 days to pay your bill, 60 days you start to worry about it, 90 days you start thinking you're not going to get it. So then you're talking 4 years, it's like, that's unbelievable. I just was a little shocked, that's all.
I think one of the things that could soften the blow, and I appreciate what Steve is saying, you know, third and fourth generations, they may or may not have the capital resources that grandpa did. But, you know, perhaps letting them know that we are flexible and we will take terms that may not have been communicated in the past to some of our people that owe us money.
The other thing to think about, Steve, is that there's 177 homes. So they're not all big numbers,
That's 10%.
right? There's
Some are very tiny numbers.
some are tiny, it's $1,000, $2,000.
Some are,
And then some are big and
One of them on the list that I'm looking at right now is $3.47, but others are substantially larger.
yeah, no, there's some big numbers.
Write anything over $25 off. No, seriously, it costs you more money to collect it than it's worth.
No, there's levels or whatever they are. Like the $34 one, you probably wouldn't pursue that. You would just roll it over to things like that. But there's
substantial.
some big ones.
Yeah.
26,000, 26,12, 17,000, 11,7.
Big numbers.
That's just from 2021.
Yeah.
That doesn't include 2022. So
I'm just wondering, you know, for a number to get that high, is that because, you know, somebody owns something and they're not there? It's in the States somewhere, or they moved, or, you know, you just sort of wonder why these things end up being so high.
Yeah, there's all kinds of reasons.
My rule applies. Either you don't have the money or you don't want to pay.
But-
That's the
right.
priority.
Let's not overlook the fact that when it does come to a tax sale, an amazing number of them pay at the last bloody minute.
Yeah.
So we're idiots for giving them as much slack as we have.
No, I agree. I think I like Lon's idea of
Yeah.
2 years. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Let's do it.
And that's a 20.
Put it on the agenda for January.
yeah, like it's something to do every year. That's what I would recommend. Just-
Can you
And this
live without
was,
Steve?
this was a real eye opener. You know, I saw that listed at home. That's a pot, that's more than half of our reserves are in our receivable.
Can you live with that, Steve, if we put it in 2023 and do the 2 years? I mean,
Yeah,
People-
no, I understand that has to happen. It's just, again, I'm just thinking with
the economy how it is right now. So
We'll be watching this video and let's see what the answer we get.
Yeah.
We don't need a motion.
No,
Well, administratively, I mean, we're more than sensitive to the issue. A lot of times it could be someone doesn't know, or someone's unfortunately passed away and there's no inheritance or that, like, all it does is just kind of flushes out
Yeah,
the communication, you know, that's all.
good report.
Good discussion. Thanks, Ian. Thank you,
um, anything else on the, oh, sorry,
Christmas party.
Christmas party?
Ian, you brought this.
I just brought this up, started thinking about it because I got an invite for Delta 9 to go to a Christmas party, which we haven't had in 2 or 3 years. And I thought, a nice way, and it's just going to be senior level, so it'll be, 20 people. Plus one. And so I thought, I don't really know anybody that works for the RM, and I thought, Christmas parties aren't as expensive as people think because they don't have to be over the top. It's just a couple of beers, it's a meal, and set aside. Now I know someone was bringing that up earlier that it's a challenge for some people to get to Winnipeg or get from Winnipeg up to Victoria Beach. Maybe we think about a lunch, for example, and people can come or not, it's their choice. But just the idea to get everybody together with their plus one. All of a sudden you're taking sort of the business side of it out of it, and it's just a social thing. So now you're meeting different people and getting to know who they are. You can put a face to the name, and I think that just kind of builds on the
Well,
culture.
it's a lovely idea. However, should we reach out to the fire department? Are they planning to have one this year for the first time in 3 years? Well, with all due respect, if they're thinking about it, we don't want to rain on their parade. So let's just
But
check that.
that also doesn't include our staff,
No.
right?
So
And I
this is a
think Ian
different
is
deal.
looking more at our staff.
Can I make an alternate suggestion? I like the idea.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned about, driving back and forth. As an alternate idea, why not organize a spring, let's get started barbecue out at the beach? We could use something at the community center there and organize a barbecue for the staff and everyone, including the seasonal people could come up.
And my experience on how it works too is that you're up there for a council meeting on December 20th. You maybe had at 4, you had a supper there beforehand, or just, you don't have to have drinks, but if you want a couple, I guess, you can maybe do it before. A lot of times we had full day meetings. At a council meeting, we would have a luncheon and maybe give an extra half hour for, everybody would come in and just have drinks and meet, talk. And
That's a
good thing. So
It sort of ties in with the social scenes.
Yeah.
So that's something. we can talk about.
Well, you can just have, as they say, the bird, they make great ribs.
Yeah, they do make it
You
good.
know, and you just give them a call and say you need, I don't know how many plates, 20, 30 plates. I'm sure they'll give you the same price, maybe give you a discount. If you wanted to have a couple of bottles of wine, I don't know what the rules are for at least having that on the table, but I know that when I go to dinners there, they have, they bring their own wine, or they sell a bottle of wine, or they sell a bottle of beer that people want.
And the office usually closes over Christmas holidays.
that's correct. Yeah.
So it's
23rd to
usually
January
just after
1st or
January
so.
1st, yeah. And often, just on a slightly different topic, often the first council meeting is right after. So that's something council might
Oh.
want to consider.
last year you postponed it.
Did we
Instead of the
postpone it?
first and third, you do it the second and fourth just in January. I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah,
Come
well,
back on January 3rd of a meeting, because I can't get stuff out the week prior because we're off, so it'd be
Yeah.
better.
but, I think that might be a nice idea. Now, the only thing is Tammy and Michelle would probably be able to make it on the 20th, right?
Well, we could have just
Or
a quiet,
Steve,
we
for
could
that
just have a
matter.
quiet little lunch here for just this office staff.
We've done that in the past.
The other thing that they do at Delta 9 is for people that would like, they give them a gift card so that they could go to Joey's and get $50
We do have staff appreciation that goes out at this time.
Yeah, I like the idea of a get together though. It's more meaningful. Person.
Weigh in?
I think the last time we did it on a Saturday, but I do like the idea of doing it on Tuesday. I like if we were to do it before one of the council meetings. I hate taking days off work more than anything in the world, especially since I love my job so much. But I'd be willing to take a day or two off to come over for it.
Really?
Yeah, I'd feel bad in the back of my head, but I mean, our staff does such a phenomenal job that, yeah.
I just think a springtime get together would be more meaningful.
How about
Seasonal.
both?
How about both?
Yeah.
Big deal, it's not that expensive, flexible model. I like the idea of both. Have a little Christmas deal just to say thank you and Merry Christmas and all that jazz. And then again in the spring, when the people start coming back from layoff and spirits are high and we haven't yet dug ourselves in any nasty holes. I like the idea of both.
Well, especially when you have people working in Winnipeg and people working in BB, it's just a nice way to at least make the effort to get people together. Find out
So
who-
how do we organize this?
I think it was Ian's idea, wasn't it?
I don't mind organizing. I don't mind organizing. If you want to do it before the council meeting or after.
I think it would be better before, otherwise you're gonna have to ask people to come. Like, it would, seems to me it would just be council and staff. It wouldn't be +1 if it's before the council meeting, because the guys are gonna be coming from work, right? And
That's fine.
Unless you want to have two, you have one in Winnipeg for Winnipeg. Yeah, I don't know, just,
So the council meeting would be what, at 7 or 6? 7. So have a get together at 4:30, dinner at 5:30, 6 or so.
That's tight. Yeah. You want dinner at about 5, I think.
What time is the? When we'll start looking at the meeting?
4:30.
Cocktails at 4:45 and
they are.
Sorry, the employees,
they quit work at 4:30.
but they can make it earlier.
We could let them go.
Go earlier, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 4 o'clock start and
Well, you and Lon kind of hammer out the details.
Sure.
All right. And as far as the spring barbecue idea, I'd be willing to try and put that together, perhaps with some assistance from Mayor.
So it looks like December 20th, Steve, that's the date of our second December council meeting. So you can plan ahead.
is that Tuesday?
Yep.
All right. Anything else? Anything on correspondence? I just want to discuss.
I had one item. We've just recently learned that the RM of Alexander has put through a bylaw which will allow for the operation of off-road vehicles on their municipal road. I think the challenge that we're going to have is Safi Road is some people think it's Alexander's Road. So
The south half is.
South Africa sure is. I think that the challenge is going to be to get some coordination between our police department and RCMP and their bylaw officers in Alexander as to enforcement, because otherwise I think it could be a bit of a mismatch.
Yeah.
I think we need to ask Bond to engage with Alexander and have some discussions about their ideas on how they plan to enforce this bylaw.
Because what's developing is you can drive east on Safi Road in your R4V, but you can't drive west. That's our
Steve?
dilemma.
I was gonna say, why do we need to adapt to Alexander? Why don't they adapt to us for a change? Because I mean,
That's the bylaw.
well, it's their bylaw. They can change their bylaw to exclude Safi Road.
Why do we need to change them? The biggest concern that I have is it is such a slippery slope for us. We all know what happened the last time with the ORVs. God only knows we don't want to open that up again. Right now, oftentimes we're looking the opposite way because of the situation already, but I don't see why another RM changing their bylaws has to force us to change ours. So we do not need to.
It wasn't suggesting, I just wanted to know how the police force, the RCMP, Victoria Beach Police Force are going to enforce a challenging situation on Safi Road.
Oh, I know. If Alexander makes an amendment or changes their bylaw to exclude Safi Road from that area, then the problem's solved, isn't it?
Good luck on that one.
Yeah.
Well, you said you're gonna,
I mean, we've taken a lot from Alexander. They still won't close the pit road parking lot, which directly affects us. We have we have drainage problems, which we're trying to negotiate with them. We have other issues along that stretch. I mean, why do we need to suddenly open up our road to off-road vehicles because they changed? They've done this, so they need to compensate for us. And I think a very reasonable thing would be to say that they were not aware that this would affect Victoria Beach, and so they don't allow them along that stretch.
I honestly think it's a matter for the police board and the police chief. There's two bylaws in place right now, and on one side it's fine on the road, and the other side is not. We can't control the police board or the police. So I think it's just.
Should I ask the police board to review the matter? That'd be the wishing council.
I think all you could really do is ask the police how they feel the best way it might be for them to handle it, but I think they
So
would
we can't
say,
enforce anything.
we can't
We
enforce
just
it.
ask them to review it and.
Well, are they aware of it?
Okay.
Or is our
The
police
police
force
are
aware of it? Okay.
I mean, it'll be cut and dry for the police, I believe. I'm not going to
Yeah.
speak for them. If you're heading west on Safi Road and using your arm, they're going to get a ticket. That's the way it is right now. And I'm pretty sure our police chief and the board would probably see it that way.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a pretty sight because there's going to be people all, it's going to be a challenging issue. And that's why I think it's a matter of the police to.
I agree. It's an
So
enforcement
I'll
issue.
bring it up with the police board then.
But that's actually what would bring it to a head. And,
Yeah.
you know, people would get tickets and they'd complain and then it would just sort of.
I mean, I'll still contact RMA and just see what they're thinking on Safi Road. If
I
there's
think that would be a good.
Yeah.
If that came up for
Maybe
debate,
they haven't considered the dilemma it's going to cause for us.
Truly. I'm not going to speak for them.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think they would have been aware of our bylaw. I think right now, just right now, it's a policing until we can either change ours or if we can convince them to maybe have an amendment to their bylaw.
I think we sent a letter over letting them know how this would affect us. I'm hoping Reason would have them change and amend their bylaw, because again, this really directly affects us, and they may have been, I would assume, very much unaware as to how much this would actually impact Victoria Beach.
I think it'd be appropriate for Lon to have a discussion with their CAO and follow it up with the confirming letter.
Well, I mean, the only option we have right now is, are you willing to have an amendment to your bylaw just on Safi Road?
Yeah.
That would be something for council to think about too.
But then what happens is that the ORV operators say, well, you did this on one road, why don't you do this along your trail system so that we can access our properties on the island? And then they say, well, then we still can't get to our place, and you've already done this in two other roads. Why can't you do it here? And
we haven't done it.
not anymore.
And we don't have a bylaw.
We don't, our bylaw doesn't allow them to be on.
Yeah.
the road. So let's let Lon start with the arm of Alexander and see where we can go, see what their comments back to us are.
I think the can of worms is going to be.
Several can of worms today.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Lots of areas for me to improve on.
Oh.
That's what happens when you go to a 2-day seminar.
I have to come back with all sorts of good ideas. The other couple things I wanted to mention, we've got this zoning bylaw. Council has received frequently asked questions in draft form. I haven't heard back from anyone. If we are going to be responsible and have a zoning bylaw, we need to make a decision. We need to have a look at these FAQs. At the FAQ, many of the answers came back from the province. Some of the questions that our residents have are provincially mandated. So I just want you to please have a look at this. I want to move this bylaw forward in some fashion.
I thought it was pretty much agreed it was going to be shelved.
Well, I think you need to review the FAQ and see
Yeah.
where the questions
Agreed.
lie and
Agreed.
the answers to those questions.
Yeah, we should have responded.
Thank you.
On my list.
Thank you.
Yeah, mine was good.
From a municipal act, but this is a bylaw under the planning act, so I would say to be coherent with the planning act. The next step would be to either make a formal resolution saying that you're gonna end the zoning bylaw. If you do make that motion and you vote it, and it votes down, that would be a sign to me that we are gonna proceed with the second reading, and then I can get my notices out to all the people that attended the second public hearing. And you would, once the timeline's expired, you would have your second reading, and then I think we all know where it goes. But if you do decide that maybe we don't want to pass the zoning bylaw, then you would be not really coherent with the planning act either, because you now have a development plan that you passed. It's not super coherent with the planning scheme with all its amendments. It doesn't jive. You would need to get back onto the zoning bylaw. But in the meantime, your development plan is supposed to be reviewed every 5 years. And this year is kind of the end of that 5-year program. So you need to just give me the heads up that that's according to the planning act, that's where we'd be. So you'd be starting over with the development plan.
It's important that we are consistent with the planning act. Look to you for guidance on that. In terms of where the lines are drawn in the sand, the timelines.
Well, I respect the fact that NECs, they need to inject a sense of urgency on
We
this.
got to do something. We got to do something one way.
You know, the office is getting phone calls, some council members, myself included, are getting phone calls from residents saying, what are you doing? Are you doing anything? Well, I'm trying. And, you know, we've got a planning scheme from 1969 that we are using with a development plan that was approved 5 years ago. It's not, it doesn't do the residents any favors.
Well, the
or
development
us.
plan called for a new zoning bylaw.
That's
We've
part
been
of the
working on
planning
it
act.
ever since.
And it's supposed to happen within a year, I believe, or so, of passing your development plan.
Yeah.
Well, we're 5 years in. It's ridiculous.
Well,
So
the old council missed the deadline.
we've all missed the deadlines. No going backwards. We got to go forwards.
So we got to make some decisions and plan A or plan B.
And part of all this is the fact that we are, given the summer we just had, the high waves, high water, high waves, high wind, erosion is a factor again. And it's coming back to us, coming back big time. There's residents who are justifiably concerned about their property. And without this new zoning bylaw,
We're in the dirt.
we're a little bit in the dark. We can't really give some of them the direction they need. Some we can. Wanasing, we've already started that process. We know we're in the process of taking that property over from the Crown.
Well, we're getting close on Pelican Point too, maybe.
Maybe, I mean, there's no requests coming in from Pelican Point. They do have, not revetments, but they do have shoreline protection, caged rocks, I call them, gabions, in front of their properties, most of them. They're failing. They're a hazard. As was predicted they would. The Baird report said you must maintain them or replace them. Over time, they will fail, and they are. So I think There's not much beach in front of Pelican Point that's really public. In low water years, yes, but this year, no. And so I think we have to make some decisions on our zoning bylaws so we can move forward and help residents protect their property.
Well, and we face the fact we're not going to be able to make everybody.
No, we're not. No, we're not. But it's pretty devastating, the level of erosion on our beaches this year.
Can we move ahead on Pelican Point?
Well, I think we still need to get a bit more information from Pelican Point, but they are repairs. We have allowed repairs before on existing projects, but they do want to do a bit more, and we do own a strip of land. The municipality does own a strip of land in front.
Well, maybe we're getting close to one or more of these on Pelican Point.
Right, so perhaps
I
survey.
read through Wolf's email. He was talking about putting some boulders up against the,
Against the
and so he didn't really say how many or where or how, you know, is it
Yeah.
more than one out? How
Yeah.
big's the boulder?
Yeah,
But
so
some of
we-
that detail would help.
Yeah, it would be.
It sounds to me like I walk along that beach all the time, so I know that it's not all falling down.
No.
There's some areas that need to be fixed. So if that's the idea, is just to fix those areas, it might not be as big a job as you think. And I guess the owner's gonna pay for it, so it's not like,
That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's been the understanding all along.
so it sounds like it's
Who's doing the
just a simple
engineering?
thing.
We are relying on local contractors.
Well, that's something
Shoreline
that did come up, and I think you raised that. I think we have to determine that. Are we going to require? I mean, that's what we have asked other people to do. You need an engineering report, you need our plans, you need, it needs to go to CTEC, it needs to go to shoreline.
You know, there needs to be a protocol established.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to letting us know what they're doing.
There's
and then
the,
we'll go to, well,
The permitting
yeah,
item is presently in place.
Some things need engineering.
So we could develop something similar to.
I can't
for
build a
Pelican
house
Point.
without a set of blueprints.
Yes, we're
You know, we need some
But I
professional
don't,
guidance.
sorry.
All three of these were part of the today's meetings package.
But
Where are we?
But these
This was
ones,
just a- this was just a-
they do a survey and get an engineer and do
Sorry,
all
go
the
ahead.
things that we're talking about.
So, yes,
They've done
we need a process and a program for them to follow. We sort of have one, but we haven't had to use it. I think we're gonna have to start using one. Steve?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'll review the FAQ right away and get back to you. But I think that I've been pretty clear in my position that we need to really, because there are quite a few things that we need to take a look, amend, and that would almost certainly trigger a review from the board because we can only do so much. And with the last meeting, there were a lot of things that I think we all said, ooh, okay, we missed that. Oh, okay, we need to amend that. I would rather just kill the bill, start from scratch quickly in an accelerated process right after we were able to sit down, make all those little amendments, put it out there, have first reading, have second reading, by next spring, by this coming spring, have everything ready for a public one final public review and just get the thing passed. It would fall along the same timeline, and we'd be able to really do it right and just get all those little details that we can amend and not have to trigger a board review.
We all know that shoreline
That's
is,
my position on it.
shoreline is a very, very, very sensitive issue. So I think it's, you know, what Steve is saying makes lots of sense. We've got to do it right, but I'm not sure we should be rushing.
It wouldn't be.
Shoreline stability. I'm only talking shoreline stability.
Yeah, this is the last you'll hear.
He's talking about the zoning bylaw.
The zoning bylaw.
This is the last you'll hear on me from me on this tonight, but it's not rushing. We know the bylaw. We wouldn't be recreating the whole thing. We would be touching up all the little things that we missed and that residents were able to remind us of things or show us things that we missed the last time. So we have all that information. We know exactly what we need to do to really set this thing in motion properly. And so it's not a massive long process. It'd be a short process, and then we get the thing done right, and then we start the process over again. And we would be able to get to third reading by the spring. That's all I'm saying. That's the process. It wouldn't be rushed. It would just simply be accelerated because we've already been through the process.
So I just have a question. So Wolf sent in this email asking if he can put some boulders in front of the shoreline in Pelican Point. Does he have to wait to see the zone bylaw gets what we're talking about here? We could go ahead and say yes.
With more information.
Right.
Yeah.
So this zoning bylaw doesn't affect that.
But we're not sure about Department of Fisheries and Oceans.
As long as you stay on the water,
As long as they stay on
you're
the
just
water. they're fine.
reinforcing the shore bank. But it's a public reserve that's thinner.
If it's frozen, they're allowed.
Yeah.
They can do it in
Do
the
all that
winter.
stuff.
That's why he's sending the email now, right? He wants to do it this way.
I just think, I have great faith in Wolf, but from a professional point of view, I think you need to engage some professional reviews before we allow it to happen. Otherwise, we could face criticism from other elements in our community.
Well, we do have a template for Wanison, and we can adapt it in some way for Pelican Point as well. But
Well, where are we at with Wanishing now? These permits being approved?
no, we haven't approved anything yet.
No, there's still a few more questions.
The one we're waiting on a survey. Property.
So it'll be on a future agenda.
Yes.
Well, does this require council approval or can you?
I think this is our group.
Yeah, it's going on public reserve.
I want to know.
And,
I want to know the rules.
Yeah, it's
I agree. I totally agree with you.
This isn't a CAO, this is a council decision.
That'll be a new policy too that we're
The
gonna.
right parties.
All I think
I'm
is-
washing my hands of this.
Yeah, but my comment was the zoning bylaw is this is all tied in together. And, many of the shoreline owners have issues with our zoning bylaw, which is why I want you to read the FAQ because it does answer some of those questions. I feel it answers some of those questions. And right now, I personally don't feel that stopping this bylaw, starting over again, even though it's not from scratch, is the right decision. I think we need to keep going forward.
I would, argue with you on that. We all are committed to being good listeners. Two very good public meetings. Some valid criticisms were made, and I think our community is asking us to go back and take another look at it, take another run at it. Doesn't mean, yes, we technically kill it, but that doesn't mean we throw it out. We would have an awful lot of work's been done. What Graham was saying earlier, we need to touch up a few things. We need to engage the community a little bit more. We have an obligation to listen to them and make the necessary changes. We will not keep everybody happy, but we got to try to keep a few more.
Well, we have to try and do a better job of sharing with our residents those items that is dictated by the province. Just no negotiation and compared to.
Well, that's still not
discretionary.
That's still not clear. We don't know whose rules apply and whose rules.
Well, the FAQ.
Yes, no, yeah, with the setbacks especially, that's actually dictated by hydro. And we have zero control. I spoke to them last week. The only thing I need to double check though is the setbacks that they recommend versus what we have in our zoning. To see if you've extended the setback or if it's with.
Well, let's review the FAQ and report back.
Please do.
Her honor.
Thank you. And we'll have to go back to the Pelican Point people and ask for more details before we can move ahead with that. I just don't want to keep them hanging. Right?
It should only last 5 months.
I know, but it's actually it's not the best. I mean, there's always issues, right? That they have to wait for the guys to be thick enough. They have to get the equipment down there, and they have to. It's a bit of a logistical issue from time to time.
No, we have assurances that the local property owners are prepared to absorb the entire cost.
Well, I mean, that's another one of the details we need, right?
Yes. It's not in the budget, so we're not.
It's not in the budget. And that's the other thing.
That's
There's
not an order
different
from the other.
circumstances there on the extent to which you upgrading your frontage may or may not affect the neighbor, which is not an issue in some other areas.
And each reach, according to the Bear report, is different, and I agree, it is different. So what works in Pelican Point, what works in Montesing is not going to necessarily be what works on Alex or Patricia or the Sand Cliffs. I don't know anything poor Sand Cliffs, but you know, they're all different and they all need to be looked at differently.
Yeah.
But right now, we don't own Sunset Boulevard, or we can't allow structures to be built on Sunset Boulevard. So I can't do anything there at this point.
Are we any closer with the province on acquiring the property? Where's Sheldon at? Has he communicated at all with you? Nothing since that meeting?
Lots to think about for ourselves and our residents. Okay, anything else, gentlemen?
Next week.
Next meeting.
Well, I guess I should add, correspondence.
Okay.
The damage done to the lake in Albert Beach, that the tearaway that happened with the high water,
Mhm.
it was approved under the DFA claim. We had Stantec go out and look at it. They recommended 1,200 yards approximately of clay to the back, but our EMO guy thinks that the clay is maybe not the best solution for that. There should be something else. So we're just working out what the best material is to use to help repair that. So,
Part that was eroded?
so I just want to let you, I don't think you
It
know.
was clay there before. Some people had suggested rocks, but I think the local people would be screaming at rocks.
Well, yeah, but they're quite correct. There are many different gradations and recipes of clay, so it's worthwhile picking the right one.
I don't know the cost per square yard of clay. Do you have any idea? And I've never worked with it. My budget.
Well, it's one thing to buy it, it's another thing to place it.
Yeah, that's.
Basically, it's free. It's the cost of the transportation, scraping it up and collecting it. Well, we're covered.
Sort of, it's kind of cash out up front.
Yeah.
Get money down the road. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
If it's gonna cost us another $100,000 to put clay in there.
Did they give us a dollar amount?
No, no, they just said so many yards of clay.
I
Better for it to repair the damage, whatever that cost is what we can source it out.
Well, we have,
And I have no idea.
we had no end of residents at or near Victoria Beach who comment intelligently on
Dr. Randy,
clay, where to get
Dr.
clay.
Randy Thomas.
Right.
Randy would be able to give you some.
He would, and
Yeah, I will look into that. I just want to let you know that it's been improved.
and so with the greens at
I just found it.
Chabot,
Chabot or the greens, Ted Green.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Be it resolved that November 16th, 2022 regular council meeting adjourned. Next regular council meeting to be held on Tuesday, December 6th at 6 p.m. here at 705 1661 Portage Ave. Everybody. Ian. And second, Graham, thank you. All those in favor? Great, thank
That
you,
was a
gentlemen.
good meeting.